Hi, I'm Matt Doran. Criminal trials frequently see moments of high drama, but hardened police and experienced lawyers were shocked by an amazing development that brought one major trial of a notorious serial killer to an abrupt halt.
Natasha is safe and well. Her family are obviously very relieved.
The judge suddenly revealed a girl that the murderer had confessed to killing had been found alive. With a population of more than 80,000, Rockampton is heralded as the beef capital of Australia. It also proudly wears the banner of being the capital of central Queensland's Capricorn region, a unique place where the outback meets the reef, making it a popular destination for overseas and local tourists. There is, however, a darker side to this idyllic city. During the late 1990s, Rocky became the hunting ground of a rapist whose sexual hunger knew no end.
Mr. Kids, come on.
And who would become known as one of Australia's worst serial killers. It's around 3:30 on the afternoon of the 22nd of April, 1999. It's been just 10 days since 9-year-old Kira Steinhardt has been allowed to walk the 30-minute journey from school to home alone. Kira has asked to be able to ride her bike like the other kids, but her stepfather tells her it's too dangerous to ride in traffic. She also knows that she is never to talk to strangers under any circumstances. After school, Kira walks with a friend to a nearby newsagent, and from there, they go their separate ways. She takes a shortcut through an overgrown, vacant allotment near the North Rockampton High School. Two local residents are sitting on their veranda over the road when they see Kira on her way home. There is also a man walking about 3 metres behind her.
There's that fellow following that girl again.
They remember seeing the same man following the little girl the day before and assume he is her father.
I'll go and put the kettle on.
That bloke's just walloped that little girl.
The woman watches as the man's white shirt bobs up and down where the little girl fell.
I can't see anything.
No, just there, right
Are
there.
you sure?
They're there. I saw it.
Oh, there goes the kettle. I'll come back.
It seems he might be trying to rape her. The man then disappears out of sight.
Love. He's just run off. He's left her in the grass and run off.
I'll go and have a look. He's gone.
But then returns shortly after in a red sedan. He wraps the girl up in his shirt, puts her in the boot, and drives off. Amazingly, the couple takes 40 minutes to call police, a decision that will later outrage the community. Students at the high school next to the allotment also get a good look at the man as he shadows Kira. They describe him as having a sinister look. Police discover Kira's abductor has left fresh footprints and tyre tracks, and they also get a description of his car, a red sedan.
They started canvassing the area, and and it was put to the media straight away that this little girl had been abducted. Now, we received a quick response to that, and it was actually from a prison warder.
Rockampton prison officer Ben Robson immediately recognises the description of the attacker as that of a man he knows and has actually seen that afternoon.
He was walking past the vacant lot when I pulled out into Robinson Road. I was about 20 metres away when I looked up and seen him, and as I drove past and he kept walking, I just pointed him through the windscreen of the vehicle, and he's looked at me, nodded his head and smiled. And he kept on walking and I kept on driving.
Robson also knows the alleged abductor's name and that he has a red car. He's spent 20 of the past 22 years in jail for sex offences. His name is Leonard John Fraser. Fraser has already served many years in jail for especially violent rapes, as well as a string of other offences: armed robberies, indecent assaults and car theft.
Leonard John Fraser was born in the North Queensland town of Ingham. He was the fourth of 5 children. His parents, his mother was a stay-at-home housewife. His father was a machinist. He was a World War II veteran that didn't often stay home a lot. His work took him away. He would erupt into many rages, and he was someone who found it very hard in his schooling life to concentrate. He was judged by schooling authorities as being somewhat of low intelligence or below average intelligence. He didn't cope well with classroom environments. He had a speech impediment, which he found difficult to deal with.
At age 15, he is sent to Gosford Boys' Home for a year for stealing.
It was where he basically learnt to take. If you want something, you just take it, and that was often in the form of sex. So he was either raped by older inmates and then in turn raped younger inmates. So he sort of learnt at a very young age that sex was something that you just took, which kind of set a bit of a blueprint for his future offending.
Out of the boys' home, Fraser quickly gets himself into trouble and receives a 2-year bond for assaulting a railway guard. He is in and out of prison for a variety of offences until he moves to Sydney's King's Cross in 1972, where he lives off the earnings of prostitutes.
He also had started to dabble a lot in drugs, alcohol use as well, and he was convicted of street fighting, standover offences.
In 1974, 3 weeks after his release, Fraser commits a series of sex attacks on 3 women. At the last attack, he drops his wallet containing his name and address and is quickly taken into custody.
And while being interviewed for that series of sex attacks, he confessed to the rape that he committed in 1972 on the French tourist. Ferocious in its nature, he left the woman unable to conceive children. He beat her so hard and was so violent in the attack, and that was just a random attack, and he was given 21 years jail.
Despite being diagnosed by a prison psychiatrist as, quote, a classic psychopath for which there is no known treatment, Fraser is released in 1981 after serving only 7 years of his 21-year sentence. He moves north to Mackay in Queensland, where he finds work as a labourer. A year later, he attacks a woman inside her house. Despite his appalling record, Fraser only receives 2 months jail for aggravated assault.
There he met a woman by the name of Pearl Rigby and was quite taken with her, and they soon settled into a relationship. Now, Pearl, as I understand it, did not know of Fraser's past, so it was a bit of a new beginning for him. He gained full-time employment for the first time in his life with Queensland Rail as a labourer, and they settled into a flat. It's like quite amazing for Fraser, who had, as I said before, led somewhat of a nomadic existence in between prison stints. So for 3 years he was basically settled. They had a daughter together. Pearl also had a son as well, so Fraser sort of took on the role of father and stepfather.
3 years later, in 1985, the predator inside Leonard Fraser returns. He stalks a 21-year-old woman for a number of days while she takes walks at a quiet beach at Shoal Point, north of Mackay. Then he strikes, violently raping her in broad daylight. Police have little trouble identifying Fraser as the attacker. In sentencing him to 12 years jail, the judge describes him as an ongoing danger to society. He serves his time at Etna Creek Prison in Rockampton, where he earns the nickname Lenny the Loon.
He served his full sentence, and at that stage, the Queensland government didn't have in place the laws that they have now, which can stop sex offenders who are deemed to be a continual risk.
The general manager at the time actually held him to the last minute, the last second of his stay. He did his full time. She actually did everything in her power to keep him there as long as she could, because she believed he was a threat to society.
After his release, Fraser moves to the coastal town of Yeppoon near Rockampton. In January 1997, he starts living with a terminally ill woman named Marie. When Marie travels to Brisbane for cancer treatment, Fraser follows her.
So Fraser hitched his way down to Brisbane and went to the hospital to see her. Marie basically said to him that she wasn't coming back. She didn't have much time left. Fraser escorted her to a hospital chapel where he locked her in and raped the dying woman, and then left her. Marie died not long after.
Fraser then moves to Mount Morgan, a small mining town near Rockampton, and quickly comes to the notice of local police.
I was on patrol with a young constable. Next moment, this pretty physically fit fellow with all tats on him steps out, waves us down, and pokes his head through the my side window, and said his name was Leonard Fraser. He said, "What's the women like in this place?" We went back to the police station, run a check, and it blew me away. And looking at his criminal history, I still can't believe that person was out in the street. With his criminal history, a constant offender, a repeat violent offender, and I knew that I had troubles on my hand.
He targeted a lot of the women there with disabilities. He would stalk some of them. He would go out with them for a little while, sort of force himself on them. In fact, he ended up being run out of town by the locals. He was actually assaulted and then literally run out of town after he spiked the drink of a local girl, local young woman, I should say, and was dragging her, in the process of dragging her home from the pub.
It wasn't until later on, towards the end, just before Len did leave, that we realised exactly what was going on in that house. And some of the neighbours had no idea, but there was young girls being drugged and raped at knife point, and they had threats made against them that if they ever at any time went to the police or reported it, well, there'd be members of a motorcycle gang that would come, or a biker gang, would come in Mount Morgan and fix them up, well and truly fix them up and their parents up. And even to this day, some of those people still believe that would have happened.
In late 1998, Fraser moves to Rockampton, where he moves in with Christine Raitt. The couple are living in a house in Baker Street when young Kira Steinhardt is abducted.
I went round to the address with 3 other detectives, Detectives Lees, Burgoyne and Crouch. Prior to us getting to the unit, Leonard Fraser came out to the footpath with a torch and confronted us and wanted to know what we were doing there. And after talking to him for a short period, his demeanour calmed down, and we explained that we're investigating the disappearance of a small child and would like to ask him some questions in relation to that matter. He agreed voluntarily to come back to the police station and help us with our inquiries.
In Rockampton, on Queensland's Capricorn Coast, 9-year-old Kira Steinhardt has been abducted. Police move quickly to pick up notorious rapist Leonard John Fraser.
He was quite adamant that he didn't have anything to do with it. And he was quite obnoxious to the police, and as a result, the information that we had and the description of the offender and the description of the car matched him perfectly. So I instructed my detectives to arrest him and charge him with child stealing.
That night, actually, when I rang Darren Lee's, I was on the phone. I asked him if they found my daughter. He politely informed me that they have someone that might know where she is. And so I knew I was going to get my daughter back that night or the next day. The next day came, still nothing. Each day it was like living in hell.
After being charged with child stealing, Fraser suddenly tells police a friend had borrowed his car.
So he invented the fictitious character Squeaky as a way of throwing police off the scent that he'd actually lent his vehicle to this character.
However, Fraser's de facto wife, Christine Raitt, tells police a very different story. She says that Fraser took her for a drive past the Rockampton soccer fields near Callaghan Racecourse and along a dirt track.
Subsequent to that, she was interviewed and was able to provide information about seeing Fraser carry a small or a large doll-like object from the boot of the car that had blonde hair, and was able to describe the clothing which matched the uniform of the school where Kira Steinhardt was attending.
Police set up Operation Care, appealing to the public for any information on Kira's disappearance and Leonard Fraser. Christine takes detectives to where she thought Fraser had left the big doll in the bushes, but nothing is found. A large force of police, SES and army personnel conduct one of the largest land, water and air searches in the state's history, but with no result.
They asked me if I'd go into the watch house and see if I could extract information as to where Kira was. And he just sat there rocking, being quiet for what seemed like a couple of minutes, and it was really rattling me. It was like he was winding himself up, and I thought he was going to have a go at me. And he said, all I can remember is I'm standing there over her like this. And I said, what, did you hit her? And he goes, oh, I think so. And I said, is she all right? And he just shut up.
It wasn't until the 13th night that Fraser was in custody that he actually told Detective Howe where her body was. And I believe that the reason why he did that is because he had in his mind that that after a certain period of time, DNA evidence could not be found on her of any sexual assault. And that's the reason why I think he confessed and led police to where she was.
As we walked along that track, I put to him how we were going to find the child, and he explained to me that when he hides a body, he puts it up against a tree, he covers it in grass, and then he stands back and then views to make sure that no one else can see where the body's hidden.
He left her lying basically on her back, semi-naked and with one knee up, and her what appeared that her throat had been cut as well. She had a horrendous injury around her throat.
She was placed in a dry creek bed up against a tree, as he had described earlier. She had her school jumper on the front of her, but other than that, she was not wearing any other clothing.
Police scoured a gully about 60 metres from the highway, the pinpointed site.
It soon dawns on detectives why they didn't find Kira's body earlier near the racecourse. Fraser had merely pretended in front of Christine Raitt that he was dumping a body as a deliberate ruse to deceive any searchers.
Fraser was someone who read, even though he was of below average intelligence, he read a lot of crime books, he talked to a lot of other crims and knew basically that after about 2 weeks that any evidence of DNA, as in his semen, would be basically destroyed by the elements. And by that time he'd hoped that it would wipe any connection from him with the crime.
Darren Lees comes to me and said that they found her. And I was so excited. She would be alive. And that she was at hospital. And I said, well, let's go. Why aren't we going? You can't go. She's not with us anymore. And I wasn't allowed to see her or idea.
Fraser has already been charged with child stealing, and police now add charges of murder and interfering with her remains. The forensic evidence begins to build. Kira Steinhardt's blood is found on a knife belonging to Fraser, and further traces, including strands of her hair, are found in his car, on the boot, the rear door, steering wheel, and at least 10 other locations. Tyre casts taken from the abduction scene also match the red car. There are 340 forensic samples in all. Despite the mounting evidence, Fraser says he cannot remember the incident due to a blackout. He denies undressing Kira, let alone raping her, and says he left her fully clothed. At the time Kira Steinhardt was abducted, Rockampton police were also investigating the disappearance of 4 young women.
So alarm bells immediately started to go off in the heads of the investigators involved in the Kira Steinhardt murder, that perhaps Leonard Fraser may have had a role in the disappearance of these other women in and around Rockampton. So they were done as independent investigations. They were all separate, but they were also, there was a commencement to examine them under the one umbrella as well, to see if there were common denominators or any linkage between them.
What they are about to uncover will shock and disgust even the most experienced detectives and horrify the people of Rockampton. With rapist Leonard John Fraser now charged with murder, detectives in Rockampton suspect he might be linked to 4 other missing females. Their suspicions prove correct when forensic samples taken from Fraser's car reveal blood and DNA belonging to not only Kira Steinhardt, but one of the 4 missing women, Sylvia Benedetti. Police show a photo of Sylvia Benedetti to Christine Raitt, who identifies her as someone Fraser knew. Then, suddenly, the case becomes international news when wreckers at the derelict Queensland Hotel in Rockampton make a gruesome discovery. In room 13 of the ramshackle building, they find blood sprayed across the floor, walls and ceiling.
There was significant pools of blood, DNA type to, later DNA type to Sylvia. There were facial bone fragments still with tissue attached, teeth, shattered teeth within the room. Large amounts of blood splatter and what's known as cast-off around the ceiling area of approximately 13-foot high ceilings. So it was evident there'd been a crime there involving great violence. While being held on remand for Kira's murder, Fraser meets up with Alan Quinn,
an old cellmate from his days here inside Sydney's Parramatta Jail. By now, Fraser knows police have enough to convict him for Kira's murder, and he tells Quinn he is thinking of pleading insanity to get a reduced sentence. He also mentions he knows what's become of some of the other missing women.
Yesterday we went back to Salsa.
Fraser probably felt a bit protected in his company, and they would often just walk around the yard. That's old school, you know, again, sort of walking off energy and talking and talking. And during this time, Quinn had remembered seeing Kira's family, seeing Natasha Ryan's family on the TV, and thought, well, you know, maybe I can do something here. So he contacted a detective called John O'Keefe, who he'd met, and told O'Keefe that Fraser had basically started to confide in him, and Quinn would start taking notes.
Although Fraser hasn't admitted killing Sylvia Benedetti, the information he gives Quinn, together with forensic evidence from the hotel, allows police to piece together a scenario of how he murdered the young woman.
Yeah, just up here, Sylvia. I've got it stashed up here. Come up here.
All right. It is 7:30 on Sunday night, April 18, 1999. Using 1.5 ounces of marijuana as bait, Fraser lures Sylvia to room 13 on the second floor of the derelict Queensland hotel.
Where's the weed, mate?
Just hold on a second, will you?
Oh, come on. I just want some smoke.
What do you think? It's for nothing.
Come on.
He tells the 19-year-old this is where he hides the drugs. He then tries to kiss Sylvia, and she swings out at him in defence.
You shouldn't have done that!
The rejection enrages Fraser, who instantly retaliates. Several of Sylvia's teeth are sent scattering around the room. In a frenzied attack, Fraser unleashes blow upon blow to Sylvia Benedetti's skull, sending blood spraying 3 metres up the walls and ceiling. When at last he stops, Sylvia Benedetti lies unresponsive, her eyes open, staring up at her attacker. It is now that Fraser rapes Sylvia's lifeless body. He wraps her head in a towel, moves her body next door, and then attempts to clean up the blood with a second towel. He then carries the body downstairs, leaving a trail of blood as it drips from her battered head. Her clothes are left in a discarded freezer that is full of water, and which Fraser hopes will wash away any evidence. But he hasn't finished with 19-year-old Sylvia Benedetti just yet.
He then went and, this is going to sound awful, but he basically drained her like you would a carcass. He sat her over a drain hole and stood her over a drain hole to let her blood drain until he could get back to collect the body. He actually went down to the downstairs male's toilet and left the body there standing and draining.
3 days later, Fraser finds out that the Queensland hotel is to be demolished, and he returns to retrieve the body. As he places Sylvia's body in the boot, her head gets caught, leaving a smudge of blood on the hinge. There's also blood marks on the rear passenger seat, behind the driver's seat, on the door trim and above the armrest. Sylvia's DNA is also found on Fraser's cigarette papers in the glove box, suggesting he enjoyed a post-murder smoke before the blood dried. When police begin questioning Fraser about Sylvia Benedetti, he immediately accuses Quinn of ratting on him, and the two criminals' friendship ends. The information Quinn supplies police is only the beginning of what will be an exhaustive investigation into the disappearances of the 3 other missing women. And there will be another sensational twist that will bring a media storm and worldwide attention to the case.
Tears just rolled down my eyes of joy, and that the first thing is Kira could move on.
In September 2000, the Brisbane Supreme Court finds Leonard John Fraser guilty of abducting and killing Kira Steinhardt. The judge describes him as a sexual predator of the worst kind and sentences him to jail for the rest of his life with no possibility of parole. Back in prison, Fraser meets up again with Alan Quinn. It appears he forgives him for informing on him, and their friendship is rekindled.
One day, they were in the prison kitchen. Fraser, it was not long after Fraser was actually convicted of Kira's murder, and he started talking to Quinn again. They broke the ice.
Take it easy. I just want to get it straight.
Fraser again opens up to Quinn and begins making maps detailing the locations of where he says he disposed of his victims: Sylvia Benedetti, Natasha Ryan, Julie Turner and Beverly Lego.
Fraser was drawing correct maps and false maps. So he was always, again, trying to either provide information that wasn't true or could be true. And Quinn basically talked him into giving the maps to the police. You know, they're going to go along this line of him being insane.
Smashed it. So what you...
Alan Quinn passes the information on to Detective Sergeant O'Keefe.
And I met with Detective O'Keefe and discussed the information with him, and he provided me with some graphic detail which sparked my interest immediately when I felt suitably satisfied that the details were sufficient to warrant further investigation. I approached senior police here in Queensland and requested that an investigative task force be formed and properly resourced to adequately investigate Quinn's claims about Leonard Fraser.
Quinn agrees to have his cell bugged and to wear a body wire. Under the pretense of writing a book about Fraser's criminal life, Quinn gathers some chilling admissions.
Did you say anything to Julie Turner before you knocked her? So no one would have heard you? Said nothing to her at all? All right. Okay, you told me that no one's seen you from the bridge, right? So no one's seen you in eyesight. But I'm saying, if you'd have said something to her, someone could have been in the shadows and heard you. That's what no one. You didn't say nothing to her.
Didn't say nothing. If anybody was there, they would have said something. They would have went to the coppers.
So you just walked up and smashed it. Nothing more saying anything.
Whatever.
Yeah, all right.
You seen Richard?
No, he's in jail, you know.
What for?
Heaps of different things.
Do you think, what was it that killed Beverly Lego? I think I was in here last night. Right. But we hear them leaving. Accidental or what, I don't know. She took us one bit. Right. Yeah, but I lashed out. When I realised what happened, I knew I had to get rid of the police.
You going to put it in the book?
Queensland homicide detectives then interview Fraser, and he makes them a surprising offer.
What had happened is on the 21st of December 2000, Leonard Fraser agreed to be removed from the correctional centre and actually fly with myself and my colleagues to the Rockampton area, and with the intention of showing particular locations.
Fraser leads police to the remains of Julie Turner, Beverly Lego and Sylvia Benedetti. Detectives soon learn that he has revisited the crime scenes.
It was difficult to comprehend why he would revisit the last resting places of these missing women. Julie Turner in particular, we could establish that it was some considerable period of time after he disposed of her body that he actually revisited the site and interfered with her remains, in fact removed her head. He didn't actually admit that he committed rape on any of the women, but he did question Quinn extensively as to how long it would take for DNA evidence to dissipate. So I think it was a reasonable assumption that all the remains were found devoid of clothing that Fraser did sexually assault all of the women, either prior to death or after their deaths.
Okay, we've just at a site here, we've now found some bone, and no, leave it.
One of the initial maps and confessions provided by Fraser to Alan John Quinn within the Correctional Centre detailed the murder of Natasha Ryan and the disposal of her body at least two different locations he detailed in a map. But from Fraser's own mouth, a detailed confession was gained that he had murdered Natasha Ryan. Independent witnesses had seen them in the company of each other. Eventually it was decided to charge Leonard Fraser with the murder of Natasha Ryan without a body being located.
Even with the mounting evidence against him, Fraser believes he is still cunning enough to escape responsibility.
When Fraser felt that the mental health line, the criminally insane line, wasn't going to work, he reintroduced his alter ego Squeaky, and that basically that he had forced him to help him dump the bodies, and that's why he knew where the bodies were, and he could take police to them. And he was going to send a press release out from Squeaky admitting to the murders, but in doing so actually brought his own undoing by releasing information that only the killer would know.
So it was that plan that backfired on Fraser to release these intimate details to incriminate Squeaky that we were able to show that Fraser knew exactly where the actual murder scenes were by locating exhibits and bras and clothing. He was able to describe that the ligature around Beverly Lego's neck was in fact her black sports brief and bra. These items or these details could have only been known to the killer.
Based on the wiretaps in Quinn's cell, police charge Fraser with the murders of all 4 missing women. For the police, it seems an open and shut case. But suddenly there's a sensational development that could see Fraser's trial aborted and put the whole police case in jeopardy.
Natasha, are you happy to be home?
Natasha is safe and well.
It will also make world news. In April 2003, Leonard John Fraser faces the Brisbane court where he pleads not guilty to the murders of Natasha Ryan, Julie Turner, Beverly Lego and Sylvia Benedetti. He says he murdered 14-year-old Natasha Ryan because she was pregnant to him. The court hears Fraser admitting to stabbing the young girl and then dumping her body in a grave on a property near Rockampton, though it is never recovered.
It's about day 9 of the trial, and this was this was like the biggest murder trial in Queensland in recent history. And a day 9 of the trial, the matter is adjourned. The court is adjourned for a time in the early afternoon because the police basically had received information that Natasha Ryan, with whom Fraser had been charged with her murder, had been found alive after 5 years in hiding, basically, and it just stunned everybody.
Police received an anonymous note that said Natasha Ryan is alive and well, with a phone number on it that they tracked to a house in the suburb of Frenchville. And lo and behold, when they went to visit, they went inside and there she was in the cupboard.
Natasha is immediately ordered to appear in court. She says that she decided to run away to her boyfriend's house after an argument with a teacher. She testifies she has never laid eyes on Leonard Fraser in her life. Fraser is immediately declared not guilty of Natasha's murder, and after 4 days, Justice Ambrose rules that the trial will continue on the remaining charges. Alan Quinn is the star witness.
All the victims' families sat through the court day after day listening to what had happened to their loved ones. Because the police had been able to successfully secretly record Fraser's confessions, they had to sit there and listen to him gloat, laugh about the atrocities that he had inflicted.
It was really horrible, but I didn't want to stop listening to it because I really wanted to know the truth. And I think the main thing that affected me when I first got to sit in there after I gave my evidence was when he said that basically my mum was worthless, no one loved her, and pretty much said she was a drug dealer and made up all this other stuff about her.
Fraser's an unusual individual insofar as he has a very volatile temper. But there were times when Fraser would appear very disinterested, not listening to evidence. There were other times when he was very hostile and aggressive, especially when Alan Quinn, his former cellmate, was giving evidence. He was very aggressive and sat upright in his seat and attempted to make eye contact with Quinn.
In previous previous hearings, I've seen Fraser sit there, pick his feet, treat everything with pretty flippant about things. This time he sat pretty quietly, dressed in the same clothes every day: white pants, white shirt, white shoes. I think he sort of even faked a heart attack at one stage to garner a bit of sympathy.
The jury deliberates for little more than a day before finding Fraser guilty of murdering Sylvia Benedetti and Beverly Lego. A verdict of manslaughter is handed down in Julie Turner's death because the jury believe he hadn't actually intended to kill her. On the 13th of June 2003, Justice Brian Ambrose sentences him to 3 indefinite jail terms and describes Fraser as an untreatable psychopath.
He didn't appear to have any remorse, because I spoke to some of the witnesses when they come out of court. He just sat there and not an expression on him. They said there's no remorse, there's no nothing. And I've said a number of times, Lenny Fraser's an animal.
Shouldn't have done that.
Fraser dies of a heart attack in jail 4 years later.
Fraser had a long history of heart problems. His father had died of a heart attack. He had experienced a heart attack at the jail, and he was taken to the Princess Alexandra Hospital, where they have a secure prison unit. And around 4 a.m. on the morning of New Year's Day, 2007, he died of a heart attack, cardiac arrest, in his sleep. So his death, I don't think, though, brought much comfort for the victims' families, because I think they had hoped that he would live and suffer a bit longer in the prison system.
And when I heard he was sick and dying, I don't normally do it. I had a couple of beers. I was happy. If there was a menace taken completely away from society, I was happy.
Come up here.
All right. But his death leaves more unanswered questions about other possible victims of this murderous psychopath. And there's even more to be revealed in the strange story of Natasha Ryan's miraculous reappearance. Fraser's death left the same unanswered question that's asked about all serial killers. Were there any other victims?
What we did locate, or the Rockampton detectives located back in April 1999 when they searched Fraser's house, they located 3 ponytails of human hair of different colours, all of which had been roughly removed with a knife or bladed instrument, all of which still contained hairbands. With the assistance of the FBI in Washington, we were able to establish that none of those ponytails, that human hair, belonged to any of our victims, nor did it belong to Leonard Fraser. So it begs the question, who was the source of those ponytails, and were there other victims of Leonard Fraser that we were unable to identify?
I firmly believe that There are other members of people's family who have been murdered by Leonard Fraser and secreted by him, and we will never know the truth.
Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the Fraser case is the sensational story of Natasha Ryan, the 14-year-old believed to have been murdered. With Fraser's confession of her rape and murder, her family had been forced to finally accept that she was dead. They held a memorial service in her honour on what would have been her 17th birthday.
Natasha Ryan and her boyfriend Scott Black went to extraordinary lengths to conceal the fact that she was in hiding and not dead, as everyone thought. They moved home a number of times, both in Rockampton and to the nearby town of Yeppoon. They always moved at night. She kept the curtains drawn and they didn't turn many lights on when she was there. She even made her own sanitary products so that people wouldn't be suspicious if Scott was buying them from a chemist. And so they were very good at concealing the fact that she was there this entire time. And when police found her, she was just a couple of blocks from where her parents lived.
Max, how much are you paying the mother?
The discovery turned heartache into joy and sparked a worldwide media storm.
When they found Natasha Ryan, it was a circus in Rockhampton. All of Australia's media descended on the town. Max Markson, the famed celebrity agent, came and signed her up and secured these six-figure deals with 60 Minutes and a couple of women's mags. European and US press were also there on the ground. It was unlike anything we'd seen before in Rockhampton, and everyone was trying to find Natasha as she was out and about. It was very exciting, but also created a lot of division in town from people who thought that she shouldn't be in the limelight after what she put her family through.
For several years, the tabloid media followed her life, announcing her pregnancies and reportedly paying a $200,000 fee for pictures of her wedding to Black in 2008. There were calls for Natasha to hand over that money to cover the massive cost of the long police search for her. Some even wanted the couple jailed. Natasha was fined $1,000 for causing a false police investigation, while Scott got 3 years in jail, suspended after 12 months for perjury. Natasha, who is now known as Tash Black, studied nursing at Central Queensland University and has a young family.
The last time I wrote about Natasha Ryan, I heard from her mum, who called and didn't want to be interviewed, of course, but just conveyed to me that Natasha and Scott live a very quiet, normal life, and that's how they're keen to keep it. But the family is still very close, which I suppose is a happy part of this story.
For the families of Fraser's victims, there is never-ending grief and the same old unanswered questions as to why a predator was repeatedly set free to reoffend.